President Trump is defending his 25% tariff on steel imports, claiming they're bringing trillions of dollars of businesses back to the U.S. This comes as the impacts of those tariffs are already being felt in places like Ohio, where many workers rely on the steel industry. Jason Carroll is out front.
I'm very optimistic, and I agree.
You're optimistic?
I am. I'm extremely optimistic.
Optimistic? Not the word some might use to describe their outlook on the economy, given all the back and forth with tariffs. But here at Swanton Welding, just outside Toledo, Ohio, the company's owner, Norman Zeiter, says thanks to Trump's tariff tactics, he and his workers are feeling good about the future of the business, despite all the ups and downs on Wall Street.
Wall Street affects us to a certain extent, but not a lot.
Welders like Ethan Sanderson also feeling bullish, hoping all that is happening with tariffs will eventually mean more work and income for people like him, which cannot come soon enough, given he's about to be a new father.
Once everything gets sorted out, that it'll help us out in the long run.
Swanton Welding has been a part of this community since Zeiter's grandfather, a World War II veteran, started it back in 1956 with just $100 in his pocket. Maintaining it has been tough. The U.S. Steel and wide swaths of the manufacturing industry have been on the decline for decades due to factors such as declining demand and the inability to compete in global markets. Toledo once buzzed during the steel manufacturing heyday in the 1950s. Now, the unemployment rate is 6.6%, compared to the national average of 4.1%.
We're one of the last standing ones in this area.
Still standing and getting a boost from Trump's tactics. Zeiter says 5 international companies have already reached out to do business.
We had Italy, we had France, we had Great Britain. We had a Canadian company reach out to us.
You had a Canadian company?
Yeah.
He says it's the first time in 70 years a Canadian company has called wanting to work with them. Across town at Wurzel's bike shop, owner Jill Wurzel also has heard from an overseas distributor.
I just got that a few minutes ago before you came in, and I was reading it and I about had a heart attack.
Wurzel received an email from a Taiwanese company informing her if tariffs do go into effect, she may have to pay an increase of up to 79%.
That's a huge impact on a small business.
She buys from China, Taiwan, and Cambodia and worries how tariffs would impact costs to customers and her ability to maintain her staff.
Payroll would be reduced and somebody might lose their job, or a full-time person will be part-time.
The Wurzel family has been in the bike business for 80 years since her grandfather founded it in 1945. The threat of tariffs is now a concern for a new generation of employees. Wurzel's nephew and his wife just quit their jobs a few weeks ago to join the family business.
We're a little bit nervous, but we trust in Jill. We know that she knows this business really well.
Back at Swanton Welding, also a new generation, one hoping Trump's tactics will benefit their industry. Allison Fagerman is an 18-year-old welder who works with her father.
I'm hoping that it gets better, and I'm sure it will. I feel like we're on a bumpy road, and eventually we'll get to a smoother road.
Jason Carroll, CNN, Toledo, Ohio.
President Trump's trade war entered a new level of confusion over the last 72 hours, which probably has something to do with comments like this.
Look, I'm a very flexible person. I don't change my mind, but I'm flexible. And you have to be. You just can't have a wall and you'll only go. No, sometimes you have to go around it, under it, or above it.
Now, let me give you the backstory here. The president was being asked today in the Oval Office about tariffs on electronics because late on Friday night, U.S. Customs and Border Protection announced that electronics imported to the United States, like smartphones and computer processors, would be exempt from those reciprocal tariffs that were put in place. A seemingly big win for tech giants like Apple, which mostly makes iPhones and other products in China. But then on Sunday, we heard from the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, who argued this.
These are included in the semiconductor tariffs that are coming, and the pharmaceuticals are coming. Those two areas are coming in the next month or two. So this is not like a permanent sort of exemption.
The Commerce Secretary arguing it's not a permanent exemption, as Trump himself posted later on, quote, nobody is getting off the hook, as he warned of new tariffs on semiconductors. But it's not just with electronics that we're talking about the back and forth here. We also saw the stocks of the big three automakers on the rise today after the president floated the possibility of exemptions for car companies that had been hit by his 25% auto tariffs.
I'm looking at something to help some of the car companies where they're switching to parts that were made in Canada, Mexico, and other places, and they need a little bit of time because they're going to make them here.
The president arguing the car companies needed a little bit of time, even though this is what he said last month about those auto tariffs.
Are there any conditions under which you'd remove these auto tariffs, sir, or is this permanent for the rest of your term in office?
Oh, this is permanent, yeah, 100%, yeah.
My source tonight is Jennifer Hillman, the former general counsel at the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, and it's great to have you back here because this has obviously been a huge question here. How much of this has to do with what you just heard from the president at the beginning there? He was saying that he can be flexible, but he's not going to change his mind. So how does the business hear that?
Yeah, exactly. And this is part of the problem because what he's fundamentally saying is he wants everything to be built in the United States. He wants all of these companies to move back their manufacturing operations. But what do business companies need more than anything else if they're going to do that? They need certainty. They need to know exactly what the lay of the land is. They need to know exactly whether, when, and how these tariffs are going to be applied, and whether, as the question was asked, are they permanent? And yet what we've seen throughout this entire saga is on again, off again, on again, off again, which does just the opposite. It gives everybody a sense of, I'm not going to spend any of my money. I'm going to sit and hold tight and wait and see what happens.
Well, and on I've talked to people who've said that the president has a point when it comes to pharmaceuticals and semiconductors, because those are two things that if we deeply rely on other nations to provide them to the United States is in real trouble if that access is cut off, obviously. So when it comes to those investigations, the national security investigations, what does that look like for something like this?
So again, we saw these kind of national security investigations in the last Trump administration. I mean, this is how we ended up with the original tariffs on steel and aluminum. So again, that is a full, robust process run by the Department of Commerce that is investigating whether or not the level of imports that are coming in that case of steel and aluminum, creates a risk to the national security of the United States. And again, risk is sort of fairly broadly defined. So that, I think, is what they're thinking they're going to do in both semiconductors and pharmaceuticals, is conduct an investigation, look at how many imports are coming in from where, and do they ultimately threaten the national security of the United States? And if so, then they can put on tariffs. But there's a process. Everybody gets to comment. All the stakeholders get to come in and say, and the Defense Department has to say something. So a very different process.
Okay, we will stay tuned because obviously that would have a huge impact on everyone. So great to have you, and thanks for keeping us updated, at least as much as we can keep updated ourselves. Jennifer Hillman, great to have you.